everyone. Welcome back to the Perfectly Imperfect podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Minnie, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode today and spending some time with me. Today's episode, I wanted to do a little Q&A session, Ask Jenny session, because I have these fun little forms all linked in the show notes if you're listening on a podcast platform, and they're in the description below if you're watching this video on YouTube. But you can submit your questions, submit your comments to me, and I'm going to talk about them in episodes like this. I got this idea from Peyton's podcast called Note to Self, which I absolutely love, by the way. And she has these forms, and I thought it would be such a fun way to make this a little more interactive, build this community, make your voices heard on the podcast. And they also kind of provide you more space to ask questions that are more in depth and have more description than, say, through like the Instagram story Q&A, because you really can't write that much there. So if you have any future questions about anything regarding life, or I have an eating disorder recovery questionnaire form that's specifically for that. If you have questions, you could submit them there. There's also like an embarrassing stories one, which I thought would just be fun. And then there's one to talk about your recent wins. So if you like this episode, definitely go give it a like, give it a review. That would really help support me, help support the podcast. And it means so much that you're here. And if you ever have any thoughts or ideas or questions you want to share, definitely go check out those forms down below, and maybe your question will be in a future episode. I think I want to jump right into this. I have 5 questions that I'm going to go over today. As far as a quick little update in my life, honestly, not much. I am back in New York City. I was traveling a bit in end of June, July, so it's been good to feel more grounded in my routine. That being said, I feel like I'm still working on my routine. My time management, I feel like, is a constant battle, a constant struggle regarding like doing content creation and pursuing that passion project of mine and working full time. I feel really established and really great in my role as marketing manager at the company I'm with. So I'm really enjoying that. I feel like I get to be creative. I get to learn more about marketing strategy and practice marketing strategy and put things in place. And just seeing the company grow while I'm here has been really, really exciting. But I still definitely have a second hat and want to pursue my content creation and UX design passion. So just finding time for it all has been really, really difficult at times. And then on top of that, finding time for myself and self-care and taking care of myself and cooking meals, working out, moving my body, seeing friends, slowing down, crocheting, all those things I really enjoy doing, but I struggle to find time. So yeah, that's me right now. Overall, I'm feeling pretty good, just the time management portion. I have started really using my calendar and like doing work blocks. Do I stick to those work blocks? No, not all the time, but they're there in my calendar. So I feel like that first step is there. I've built in that habit. So now it's just kind of acting and following my work block schedule is the next part. But again, I've just been reminding myself that discipline can be a very strong form of self-love. I think in my case, self-discipline has been very up and down regarding whether it relates to self-love or self-rigidity or self-control or self-hate. It really can come across in all those different forms. And for a while, when I was deeper in my eating disorder a few years ago, that self-discipline and that rigidity of my lifestyle and my diet was coming from a place of fear and coming from a place of unhappiness and feeling unsatisfied with myself. So now I've just been working to really reframe that and reframe discipline as a way that can be positive, and it can come from a place of self-love. It doesn't have to be something you resort to because you just hate everything about yourself and your body and your life. So that is my little spiel for today about how I'm feeling. But again, overall good. It's just I feel like these are honestly things that anyone growing up, anyone in kind of places of transition in their life, whether you're changing jobs, changing apartment, changing friends, changing partners, or just, I don't know, anything. These are things that are always coming up in those moments of transition. And as you're finding your routine, it's definitely not an easy process, but finding self-compassion, finding ways to care for myself and really get to know myself on a deeper level has been helping that process go a little bit more smoothly each time. So that's my advice for that. But let's get into the questions and get right on into it. So the first question here says, my parents went through a divorce when I was 20 and I'm turning 21 soon. I still feel like a kid because I'm finding the transition to a single household difficult even as a soon-to-be adult juggling her life. So I honestly, this question really, really spoke to me because I haven't really shared much about that element of my personal life on the podcast or on social media, honestly, because it's something I feel like I'm still working through. But my parents also went through a divorce in 2020. Yeah, early 2021. It really shifted things and made me question a lot about myself and about families and about love and about marriage. For 20 years, my family unit was me, my mom, my dad, my brother. The four of us were a unit together, grew up in the same house, did, everything together, traveled together, and nothing seemed out of place. And then suddenly it kind of all came crumbling down. The divorce, for me at least, was very much a surprise because I had moved to university and moved out. I think my brother, who had stayed at home while I was at university, while he was finishing up high school, I think he had kind of more of an idea that it was happening. But for me, it was a complete surprise. And it really shocked me and shook me up. So this question I definitely relate to because I'm in the same situation. They divorced when I was 20, turning 21. And it's a really strange feeling because you're still not quite an adult, but you're not a kid either. And you're independent, but there are some elements maybe you're still dependent on your family for, or you feel that bond so strongly with your family because you haven't quite 100% moved out yet. You haven't really started your adult life yet, but you're also wanting to start that and you're wanting to start lessening the tightness of the ties with your family. And then suddenly it all breaks in front of you. And it's definitely not something to underestimate. And it's not an easy process to go through. So 1, I'm really sorry this is happening to you. But 2, you're not alone. I know this feeling. And this would be my advice. So first thing would be to just not judge yourself for feeling this way. I went through a period of really judging myself and getting a bit angry at myself and my family and my parents for getting divorced. I went through a phase of really being confused and angry, and I was judging myself a lot in that moment. And I was saying things to myself like, why am I affected so much by this? Like, I'm 21 years old. I've moved out. Like, whatever they want to do, if they want to get divorced, it shouldn't affect me so much. But that really didn't help the situation at all because judging myself just made the process a little bit more difficult to deal with. So definitely having my boyfriend to talk things through and my close friends who had also grown up with my parents being married and they were very involved. We were all involved in each other's lives. So for them, it was a shock as well. But having them to really just talk about it and get everything out in the open helped so much. So if you have friends, if you have maybe other family members, or in my situation, I've grown very close with my mother. So I feel like I'm able to talk about a lot of the things that I went through now with her. Of course, she took her time to heal. She took her time to process the divorce, but having her has been amazing to be able to talk to about the whole process and my perspective on it. And equally, I've been able to hear her perspective on the whole situation. So yeah, if you can find friends, partners, boyfriend, girlfriend, current parents, maybe someone else's parents, or professional help through a therapist, psychologist. Any way that you can just talk about it and get it out in the open will help validate your feelings and stop the judgmental thoughts around it. And at least that's been my experience. Another way, if you don't really feel like talking about it, I have preached this so many times, but journaling about it has helped me so much. And just sometimes in the moments I've had spiraling thoughts, maybe confusions of my own struggles. And then on top of that, I feel a layer of my family struggles and just feeling overall overwhelmed by my own thoughts and confusion. Journaling has really, really helped me just get it out all on the page and kind of let it leave my brain. And then I can start to process it from there. So if you don't know where to start, just asking yourself what's going on, what's bothering you. And even through the process of writing down, maybe you're not quite sure, you can't quite pinpoint what you're feeling or what's going wrong, just the act of starting to write about it, I feel like sometimes opens the floodgates and allows the rest to come. And of course, that's not a comfortable feeling at all, but it's a necessary feeling. And I feel like it's a necessary part of any healing journey, whatever you're healing from, whatever you're transitioning and growing through, you have to open those floodgates somehow and let yourself feel, or else they're going to open eventually one day and you're not going to be prepared. And it might just be so much worse than if you had done it in the moment in a controlled environment. And journaling has been that controlled environment for me in so many aspects of my life. So I can't recommend that enough. And last part is to take time away from your family if that's what you need. I know I did that. Going through your parents divorcing as an adult is a very strange thing because, like I said, I felt very disconnected from my family in the way that I was wanting to start my own life and start living independently and be independent. But then at the same time, your family unit that was so important to you and it felt so strong has crumbled. So, that's going to affect you even if you are trying to live independently and to start your own life. So I just really decided that I needed to take time for myself away from both my parents as they were separating. I stayed in contact with my parents just because we've always had that constant communication, but I definitely noticed that it lessened for a while in my life, and I needed to just take the time for myself to figure out what my next course of action would be and what my true perspectives and feelings were on the whole situation. I felt like if I stayed with my family, if I stayed connected to one of my parents, because now I wasn't able to live with both of them in the same family household, it would have just got really confusing for me. So I had already moved out to my own apartment. So I think just really pouring into my own cup and pouring into my own life and really finding ways to fulfill myself in my own life and spending time with myself and journaling and thinking about it really helped me just decide how I am going to approach the situation. And I think that was also healthy time and good time for my parents to process whatever they needed to process, for my brother to process whatever he needed to. Me and my brother definitely did stay in touch though. And if you have a good relationship with your siblings, I would say this is something you can so bond over. And me and my brother definitely have, because we've been able to be there for each other. We're the only two people in the world who've had the exact same experience. Obviously, we experience it in different ways, but the same thing happened to us and only us. Obviously, like my parents too, but it just feels a little bit different because they're the ones actually divorcing and we're the children of the divorce. So if you have a sibling that you're going through it with, and you can connect with them and talk to them about it, that's really helped me through this journey as well. And then last little point is honestly finding friends who are similar age and you like hanging out with, and they are also children of divorce, kind of helps the situation as well. I found recently that I bonded with a couple girls over that fact. We were all children of divorced parents. And it's kind of, something funny you can look back on. Obviously, if it's like too fresh, certain things might be triggering. But if you're at a place where you've taken your time to heal, you've spoken to your sibling, friends, whoever you need to, maybe find some friends and, open up about it. And you'll probably find that other people have dealt with the same thing. So you can kind of connect and bond over that fact. I've found has just been nice. So moving on to question number 2 is, I'm currently on an eating disorder recovery journey, and while I have improved a lot in my eating, my body image and my self-perception needs a lot of work. I find that the body resilience method works well for me, but I'm still having feelings of not being good enough. How do you affirm yourself and feel better when thinking about your body? So this question, I will just be transparent and say I'm very much still working on. I don't have all the answers. I still have really tough days with my body. I have moments in recovery where it's been really, really difficult, but I will confidently say that I'm much further along in that journey, and I have so much more love and compassion for my body than I think ever in my life before. But that doesn't mean you don't have hard days. So I think just starting off with that point is build compassion for yourself and understanding that not every day is going to be the same. If you struggle with body dysmorphia, your body image, your brain sometimes likes to play tricks on you, and one day you'll feel great and confident, and then maybe an hour later or the next day you feel the worst ever. So it's just kind of understanding that those days are going to happen and realizing that you don't need to listen to every thought that comes your way. You are not your thoughts. That's something I remind myself all the time. And that I don't need to engage in the negative and unhelpful thoughts. And kind of embracing that mindset of accepting that they're going to be there and almost expecting them to come has helped a lot more, because then when they do come, they're faced with more compassion and more acceptance rather than this like hard wall against the uncomfortable thought, because I'm just wishing it away. I'm just wishing to avoid it at all costs, but it's going to come anyway. So first thing I think would just be to open up your mindset to understanding that your body, your brain, your thoughts, everything about life fluctuates, and that's normal. Nothing is permanent. So the more you can approach that fact with compassion and understanding for yourself that you're not going to feel the same way every single day, I feel like the easier it gets. But again, that's something I'm working on a lot, but when I can do that, I find it helps a lot. My second piece of advice is to start viewing your body as more of like a tool and a machine rather than kind of something that's part of your value and part of your worth. I feel like growing up in today's society, especially in Western culture, our bodies are always the center of attention. People are bringing to your attention what you look like. People on social media are showing their bodies and what they look like. It does feel like your physical body and your appearance, it's very centered around that. So it's really, really difficult to not view your body as the center and most central important thing in your life. So don't beat yourself up, but something that's been really, really helping me is starting to kind of strip away that ingrained mindset and start viewing my body as more of like a vessel or a tool or a machine that enables me to experience the world. Because fundamentally, that's what it is. Genetics, your metabolism, all of those things that make up your body, a lot of it is out of our control. And your body is going to be your body no matter what you do. Yes, it's true. You can alter it. You can manipulate it in certain ways. But at the end of the day, your body is your body, and that's the only thing that's going to enable you to walk through the world and experience this life and see things, talk to people, do things, travel. And I think getting to that baseline, understanding that my body is what enables me to see people, interact with people, and understand the world around me, I feel like I have a lot more compassion and gratitude for my body, because I'm not focusing so much on what it looks like and placing my worth on that instead. Another thing I've been trying to do recently is repetitive affirmations. I definitely still struggle with doing physical, like speaking to myself in the mirror, but when I catch myself having a negative thought, or I'm commenting in my head about my body or how it feels in my clothes, or I see some girl on the street and I instantly compare my arms to her, my legs to her. Anytime I notice my brain doing that and jumping to those types of thoughts, when I can, really try to reframe it and replace it with a positive thought. Oh, I wish my arms were toned like hers. Replace that with, I'm really grateful my arms allowed me to hug my boyfriend this morning. In moments where maybe you just don't like the way your clothes feel on your body, or you notice kind of in a photo you see your skin or your body looking a certain way. Instead of having a negative reaction to, I don't like the way that looks, I don't like the way that feels, you could say to yourself instead, I'm really grateful my body allowed me to see the friends in that photo that I'm standing there with. So just finding ways to kind of turn around those negative thoughts and those limiting thoughts around your body and your self-worth is definitely not easy, for sure, but with time and with practice, it becomes more natural, for sure. And then third point on this is, again, journaling about it. I think journaling applies to probably most of these questions, but journaling about it, just really getting to know your thoughts and your triggers and why you think certain ways. If you have access to therapy, a therapist has really, really helped me with my own body image journey and just she's made me think about things in different ways that I never thought before, and made me question certain thought patterns about my self-worth and my body and the relation between the two of them, and just making me realize that it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, and that no one else is placing my self-worth based on my body, so why should I do that about myself? And then final thing for this, I'm kind of speaking to myself again in this sense, but if you are present on social media and you tend to scroll, or you're active on TikTok, a lot of people are showing their body, they're showing off their figure, they're displaying their body to the world. And while I know there's a great space for body positivity and just a demonstration of so many diverse shapes and sizes in the human body, personally, I think even seeing that in the positive side and the body positivity side of Instagram can be a bit triggering even for myself. I think just being exposed to so many different bodies and consuming content of what people look like and their body type, and people showing their body in front of the camera, instead of kind of wishing that they didn't post that, I've instead resorted to, well, I'm just not going to consume it. I'm not going to scroll. And I'm finding that the more I'm detaching and pulling back from just consuming other people's lives and what other people look like, it's giving me more space to really focus on myself and focus on my relationship with my appearance, my relationship with my body, because I'm not so crowded by all the other bodies and all the other lives that I'm seeing on social media every single day. If you don't scroll and you're not active on social media, then I guess this doesn't apply to your question, but that's just something I found that's really, really helped me, is just getting off social media really has given me space to reflect and think about my own relationship with myself, and just kind of quieting the outside noise of all the ways I could compare myself to all these different bodies. So moving on to question number 3, this one says, "Hi, I just came across your podcast. I love it. I've been out of education for 2 years now, and I never thought I would go back. Being very ill in a public education forced me to drop out, so I then took up studying at home. It wasn't for me, so I applied to college. I recently had an interview at this college, and immediately then and there was offered a spot, which I said yes to, no questions asked. When I left education, I was heartbroken and grieved the life I once had, even though I was so ill. I was made to feel invalid about grieving by so many people. Now I'm going back to education and I'm so anxious, and again, I've had so many people make me feel invalid. Now I find myself awake until 4 a.m. thinking about education, the life I had, etc. I feel a weird sort of grief with leaving studying at home. I hated it, but it's weird to leave it after 2 years, and somehow I feel like I failed. I never sat exams, and my plan was to sit them studying at home, but I never reached that goal. Going to college has me anxious, and I'm anxious about the days I'll be awake from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., which I haven't done in 2 years. I'm still struggling with illness, and I think that that's added to the anxiety. I'm feeling a lot of pressure, which I'm told not to, but I've lost a lot of sleep over this. I don't know how to feel, how to make it better, what to expect, how to prepare, and how to have self-care weeks or days before I start. I've always struggled with self-care. This sounds like a lot, and you're going through a lot. So number 1 is to start building compassion for yourself. And I know this is so much easier said than done, but if you start approaching this as a way to get to know yourself better, and through this transition, you can learn more about yourself and try to understand yourself rather than feeling stuck about thinking about yourself in the past and how it used to be, that might help a lot in this transition. I know firsthand how hard it is to move on. And when I'm faced with new situations in my life now, of course, it's natural to revert back to how would I have faced this in the past? Because that's all you know. You don't know your future experience because you haven't experienced it. But I think some moments it's not helpful to think about how you handled it in the past. I know for myself, in my past, I handled things in very, very different ways, which I know didn't lead me to a great place. As much as it's very anxiety inducing and unknown, I've kind of had to learn to face new experiences and face new transitions and events in my life with a very open perspective, because I know in the past how I would have handled it, but I wasn't happy and content with the end point and where I got to at that end goal. So with this new experience, I've worked to just be a little bit more open and try to combat that anxious voice telling me to revert to my old habits and telling me that everything's going to go badly and it's, going to be a failure, just learning to accept that they'll be there, but don't let it stop you. And again, I know that's easier said than done, but just kind of going in with that mindset, I feel like could help a lot. I'm going to say it again. Journaling helps me a lot. I know the feeling of the sleepless nights. Anxiety has kept me up, kept me unable to fall asleep countless times. And recently I've been finding that journaling before bed, or not even journaling, but just like writing down a list of the things I'm thinking about. Maybe that looks like a to-do list for the next day, or just jotting down certain notes that are on my mind, or thoughts that I'm thinking about, or stressors that are coming up, and just writing them down. It doesn't make the anxiety go away necessarily all the time, but it definitely helps having it out on the page. I notice that it lessens the spiraling in my brain so that I can more easily fall asleep. So that might be something that you could try, just writing things down just to get the thought out so that you can fall asleep and rest and let your brain rest so that you can feel rested and ready for the next day. The next thing I'll say is I noticed in this question, it looks to me like you're overthinking a bit, and that's not saying that you should invalidate how you're feeling, because you very much should validate how you're feeling. This is a very tough transitional time of your life. After living a certain way for 2 years and going through physical, mental illness, that's not something to take lightly. This is a very valid experience, and it's a challenging experience, but that doesn't mean you won't get through it, and that doesn't mean you won't grow stronger through this experience. But while validating an experience, you can notice and try to help yourself not spiral and dwell and overthink on certain situations. I know I've really struggled with that, and feeling like if I try to stop myself from overthinking, that simultaneously means I'm invalidating my experience. But I don't believe those things have to go hand in hand. You can still validate that something's hard and something's challenging to work through, but you can try to tell yourself to stop overthinking and stop dwelling on the things that maybe are irrational. And that's kind of very much what anxiety is for me, and it looks like that might be happening for you too. So to help yourself in those situations, I found that light physical activity, or even just another sort of activity with your hands, drawing, painting, crocheting, like physical activity could be like a walk or a podcast walk or some yoga, some stretching, like those types of things just really help me kind of get out of my head and more into my body. And like crocheting, arts and crafts, like all that stuff really helps too, because it gives your brain something else to focus on rather than the anxious feelings and the challenges that you're facing with whatever situation you're dealing with. So I can't recommend that enough. Recently, I've been going on a lot of walks. It's been nice outside in New York City, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. And I also love just a podcastless walk as well, just a walk with me and my thoughts. But sometimes if those thoughts are very troubling and overwhelming, then a podcast can really help, not to push away and diminish the anxious thoughts, but to just kind of give yourself a little bit of a break to be in yourself, think about something else for a while. And then sometimes I found that coming back to thinking about the challenging situation at hand or the transition that you're facing, after having that time away, you're able to think a bit more clearly and not kind of overwhelm and not overthink things as much. Those are my recommendations for this situation. Good luck with school. I know you're going to kill it, and it's going to be great. And just keep facing this experience with compassion, validate yourself, but also know that you're strong enough and you can trust yourself that you'll get through it. The fourth question says, sometimes I feel like my recovery is too easy and I'm not struggling with it as much as I feel like I should be. Number one thing I'm going to say is that every single recovery journey is valid. Whether you get a scientific official diagnosis, whether you self-diagnose, whether someone else goes to treatment, whether someone doesn't, whether someone has a therapist, someone doesn't, like whatever story, whatever relationship you have with your own journey with food, with healing, with your body, that is valid because it's your journey. No one else's journey is supposed to look the same, and no one else's journey is going to look the same. This idea that recovery has to look a certain way and be a certain way, or there has to be a certain level of severity for it to be quote unquote real, I think is just all made up, and it's just natural human desire to want to label things and categorize things. But it doesn't mean that you need to live and abide by that and define your own life according to these societally normal rules and labels. I've definitely struggled with that a lot in my own recovery. I didn't spend time in an inpatient treatment. I didn't really get hospitalized. I did a lot of it on my own, and I maybe went at a slower pace than others. I wouldn't say I ever went like quote unquote all in. I feel like I did things very gradually. I never cut things out completely, but I know people who've shared their journey, and maybe they go to inpatient treatment, or maybe they go all in. Maybe they cold turkey stop certain things, where I didn't have that experience. And so I've definitely gone through moments where I thought like, oh, if I did this a different way, maybe I would have got somewhere faster, or maybe I would be feeling better by now if I had done this. But your experience is your experience, and there's no point in dwelling on the past. All you can do is think about the present, think about how you're feeling now and where you can move on in the future. That's all you have control over. And even that, sometimes you don't have control over that. If you're facing certain financial limitations and you don't have access to certain things that other people do, then your journey and your recovery journey is going to look different. So number one thing is just to remind yourself of that and validate your own experience for yourself, because I don't know you, but I know that your recovery is valid, even if you feel like it's easier than others. If it's a struggle for you or if it's easy for you, that's still a valid recovery journey because it's your recovery journey. And again, like all these questions, I'm going to say that journaling has helped a lot with this. I feel like my journaling has helped me just really focus on my own journey and kind of quieting the voice of society's norms and labels and expectations. Journaling has allowed me to just be aware of those things, but really narrow down and focus on my own experience and get to the bottom of what are my triggers, what are my challenges, what are my wins, what are the things that are going to help me in the future, rather than looking externally and trying to gain that from society at large or other people on social media or other people sharing their recovery journey. I definitely think those external sources and influences can be helpful for inspiration, but they have to stay inspiration. They have to stay as ideas of how you could approach maybe your next step of recovery. They should stay as inspiration for ways you could approach or certain mindsets. But at the end of the day, your recovery is your recovery, so it's not going to look exactly like someone else's on social media or someone else's in your life is going to look like. So just understanding that and reminding yourself of that has been so crucial for me. So I think that could help a lot. And then moving on to the last question today, number 5, it says, how do I stop telling myself, quote unquote, tomorrow I'll change and be different? There are ways I want to live my life that I know will make me feel better, happier, and healthier, but I mess up once during the day and then I spiral and tell myself, tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow is the day I change. Do you have tools to combat these feelings? I know this feeling all too well. I lived a pretty significant portion of my life in this mindset, thinking, tomorrow I'll make that change. Tomorrow I'll do better. Tomorrow I'll eat better. Tomorrow I'll work out more. And just thinking like, tomorrow I will do better and I'll feel better. And tomorrow's the day I start the rest of my life. But thinking rationally, like, you can't change your whole life in a day. Your life is how long it is because it takes time for things to happen. Nothing like that to that extent is going to happen overnight. And so I think just reminding yourself that nothing to this extent is going to happen overnight. So it's an unrealistic goal that you're setting for yourself, that you are going to change overnight and change your habits. It takes months and years for neural pathways and, the science behind your thoughts and the neurons firing. It takes so much time for those things to develop and for habits to develop. So to think that you're just going to reverse and unwind all of that in one night is very unrealistic. So remind yourself of that and understand that in order to build a habit, it takes time. So in order to break a habit, it also takes time. I know it can feel so frustrating and you just want to feel like things are going to change quickly and you know so clearly what you want, but you just don't know how to get there and what actions to take to get there. But building that self-compassion, building that self-trust is a crucial and important part to this journey as well. And when I was in this mindset thinking tomorrow's different, tomorrow will be better, I was saying that coming from a place of self-hatred almost, and I had a lack of self-compassion and a lack of self-love because I didn't like the way I was living and the things I was doing so much that I was convincing myself, oh, I just need to change my life. I need to change everything tomorrow because I hate this current situation so much. But like you're finding, it's very, very difficult to change and make new habits when you're in a place of self-hatred and not self-accepting. So I would say number one is to just start thinking about that. Start thinking about where in your life maybe you are lacking some self-compassion, lacking some self-acceptance, and how can you start to work to build self-love and self-acceptance in those areas of your life. I'm going to say it again, but journaling helps so much with that. I feel like I've literally written concrete lists, like what I'm unsatisfied about in my life. And sometimes just getting that all out, even if it may feel uncomfortable and sad that you don't like so much of your life, it's a great starting point to then just pinpoint like, okay, this is something I don't like. Why don't I like it? Is this some sort of societal pressure I'm feeling? Is it a pressure from a family, from a friend that it's not right? So I don't know, just journaling in that sense has helped me a lot. The second piece of advice I have for this is to also think about if something is so difficult for you to change and build a habit of, maybe start thinking about and asking yourself, why is it so difficult for me to do this? And why am I so stuck in this all or nothing black and white mindset that I either have to do it or not at all? And if you want to hear more about my thoughts on black and white mindset and all or nothing thinking, I have a whole episode on that. I'll link it down below in the description and in the show notes. So you can definitely go listen to that afterwards. But that is something I've struggled with my entire life, and I'm still very much struggling with it and have to kind of face it and combat it every single day. But what's really helped me with this particular mindset is thinking about why something's so difficult for me to do. So then maybe I'm not meant to do it. And I know that can be really, really difficult to accept because you want to achieve these goals. And it's, of course, important to believe that you can achieve anything you put your mind to, because you really can. But maybe it's not the goal that's the issue. It's the process that you're expecting yourself to get there with. In my past, I've limited myself to achieving goals in one certain way. And if I didn't achieve that goal in that way, I thought I wasn't going to reap the benefits of the goal, or I wasn't going to feel fulfilled when I reached that goal. But that, I've realized now, is just my own limiting mindset and my own black and white mindset. So opening up your mind to the opportunity that achieving goals can look very differently for very different people. Sure, you can reach the same end place, but the process and the journey of achieving that goal is going to look very, very different. So maybe this is just a sign that your brain and your body, something's not aligning there, and you need to rethink the process of how you're going to achieve the goal. And I found that focusing on the process rather than just achieving the end goal really has enabled me to actually feel fulfilled through the process of achieving this goal, and has helped me just get to know myself better and get to know what style of processes do I need, what style of habits do I want to build in order to achieve this end goal that I'm wanting so bad. Black and white thinking will not make that easy for you. It'll make you think that you have to achieve this goal in this way, or it's not even worth going for. But that is just so irrational and so not true. There are so many different pathways that you can take to achieving the same goal. So that is my big piece of advice for this one, is to just really think about, why is it so challenging for you to achieve this goal? And how can you focus more on the journey to get towards that goal instead of just achieving the end goal and seeing it as like a checkbox just to check off? Think about, how can this habit, how can this goal add to my life, and how can I fit it in a way that fits for me and only me, and really try to cut out that comparison to anyone else or how anyone else has achieved this goal that you know of. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for sending in your questions. I honestly really enjoyed answering these questions, and doing things like this always reminds me of just how not alone we are in our problems and in our struggles. There is always going to be someone out there who's gone through the same or a very similar experience to you. And I love this podcast platform for so many reasons, but one reason is to just normalize these types of conversations and make a space where your voice can feel heard. Maybe my form on this podcast is the first time you're voicing these challenges. So if that's the case, big round of applause to you, because that takes so much courage to just voice something that you're struggling with. Or maybe this is something you've been talking to every single person in your life about. And again, that takes so much courage as well. So I just love that this can be a space where we talk about things, talk about struggles, and know that we're not alone going through it. I believe that we as humans should uplift each other and help each other through these things rather than trying to push each other's down and, get through it, every man for themselves. I feel like so much of the world is like that, honestly. So if I can create a pocket of the social media space where we can embrace each other's challenges and embrace each other's growth and journey, I really want to do that. So thank you again for sending in your messages, sending in your questions. I'd love to hear more from all of you if you have anything you want to share. And I can't wait to do another episode like this. This has honestly been so therapeutic for me as well. I think reflecting on your challenges and your questions has made me think about ways that I approach similar situations. And I don't know, it's always good to reflect on stuff like that. So thank you so much again for being here. If you want to stay connected with myself on social media, you can find me on Instagram at jenny.mini. I have a vlog personal YouTube channel as well under my name, Jenny Mini. You can follow the podcast Instagram at perfectlyimperfect.pod. I also have the podcast YouTube channel where I'll be doing visual videos of all the episodes, which is also linked in my bio on my YouTube and my Instagram. You can find me in all the places, and thank you again for being here. Thanks for spending time with me, and I'll catch you in the next episode.